Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on Spite Reach playing as the Tomb Kings against Brettonia with a bit of an all-in ridiculous build. So, figuring that my opponent was basically bound to have some large and some nasty cav, I decided to go very heavy onto the Necrosphinx play. So you can see here we did bring the Necrosphinx and the Sphinx of Usef, both of which are still, despite the nerfs, very, very potent combatants. You do not see them as often as you did before. Definitely they're a less common sight on the battlefield. But still, they've got 35 bonus versus large, they've got monstrous baseline stats, they've got very good mobility, 100 armor, over 6k HP. They're both very, very solid, very respectable units in their own right. And definitely still very competitive. So I decided to bring two of them. Alongside them, to really do the infantry mop-up, I decided to go with two chariots. I brought a Necrotect, who does have the Vambraces of the Sun as well as Restore. He is also on chariot. The Vambraces of the Sun I find to be very useful because they synergize nicely with the Sphinx of Usef, and of course help your troops hold up your opponent. And with -9 melee attack, that is definitely a very, very solid, very respectable debuff. Alongside him, Citra the Imperishable, mounted on the Chariot of the Gods, you can see here, with a 4-horse team, those huge blades sticking out. Definitely a very, very potent sight on the battlefield, able to just trash Brettonian infantry and run them over. He's got Usef's Incantation of Desiccation, hoping to sort of make my opponent's units much weaker, much less capable of damaging my Sphinxes, make the Sphinxes much more capable of destroying them, as well as Jaff's Incantation of Cursed Blades as a cheap sort of upgrade to continuously spawn the Restless Dead. Of course, we also do have the Unyielding Will, which is a +5 melee attack, +5 melee defense buff within a rather respectable range of 55 meters, I do believe. We do have the Blessed Blade of Tra, which is a great debuff, as was the Wrath of Tra, which is an AoE explosion just to sort of help Citra escape if needed. For our army, it's mostly spearmen. There's not much to say. It's 4 units of spears, 2 units of Tomb Guard in the front. Basically units that will do rather well against any Brettonian comp. Unless your opponent goes super heavy on Battle Pilgrims or super heavy on Foot Squires, neither of which I think are that common in this matchup. This sort of front line will hold very nicely. Up in the sky, we do have 2 units of Carrion. This was a bit of an experiment for me. These guys are technically small targets, and they've got very high melee defense, so I figured that potentially if my opponent brought Pegasus Knights, if he brought Grail Knights or any units like that, and he was trying to snipe out my big guys, I could use these guys to sort of dive them in alongside the Sphinxes and try to reset or deny my opponent the ability to get surrounds on these guys. We'll definitely see how that works out here. Otherwise, of course, they can always use to shut down backlines if your opponent goes more infantry heavy, but we'll definitely see how things go. For my opponent's build, he did go very infantry heavy, but he's got a whole huge contingent of cavalry hidden in the field there. So you can see a mix of men-at-arms and men-at-arms with spears. There's a single unit of Foot Squires out on the flank over here, as well as a single unit of Battle Pilgrims here in the center, backed by a Grail Relic. What I would have probably done is shifted these Foot Squires here into the center, next to the Grail Relic, because these are your 2 core units here as far as carrying the front line fight goes. This mob of trash isn't going to be winning the fight. They're not going to be winning any awards. But otherwise, I do think this is a solid front line. It's going to be able to probably beat my front line in an extended fight, as long as they don't get Fear or Terror out of it. Up in the sky, King Louis with all of his spells, buffs, all that sort of stuff. And of course he does have that regen, a single unit of Royal Pegasus Knights, and then a whole mob of cavalry, including Grail Guardians and double Grail Knights. Now, a bit of a mistake here, in my opinion, is that my opponent did not bring a caster. He's got no Lore of Life, he's got no spells of any sort. And what I do immediately, I was hoping to get a very quick gooning here. I dive in with my 2 Necrosphinxes, looking to get a very quick assassination on the Grail Relic, but unfortunately they're kind of whiffing, they're kind of failing. I'm not even sure why. The Grail Relic gets pretty terrible melee stats, but they're getting reset and they're just failing there. Over here, Louis and the Grail Knights are going to dive in, and the Royal Pegasus Knights are going to dive in, start surrounding me. Unfortunately, my infantry is way out of position. I really should have waited for this moment. I should have waited for my infantry to be here in the fight, and this pure moment of greed here is going to start costing me very heavily. You can see the Necrotect already up to 15 kills, Citra up to 11. If you've seen my video on heroic chariots and why they're better than normal chariots, this is basically why we're already racking up kills. Had my opponent had a Lore of Life, this would be very valuable. He doesn't though, so it's not the greatest achievement ever, but definitely still nifty. Now the Carrion are going to be able to get into the fray relatively effectively, which is nice. Whereas I'm not really able to do that with other units. We are going to drop a Restore on the Sphinx of Usef there, which is nifty. But as the Necrotect, or the whereas the infantry and none of those units can really get in there all that effectively. The carrion are going to be able to dive in here, but as you can see, they actually get taken to Pound Town rather quickly, so that's definitely a bit of a disaster. You can see I'm going to drop the Usev's Incantation of Desiccation, trying to debuff all these troops, but Grand Light's getting a very nice surround here on the Necro Sphinx, and with the Sword of Corone going down, they're actually really melting it down very, very efficiently, so definitely some good stuff from my opponent. Those carrion being debuffed like that by Lewin are just not going to stand a chance, they just get demolished. And unfortunately, Cetra, who does have those debuffs, who's got those buffs, is not present to help, so I really needed him to be in here, helping these Sphinxes, but instead, this Sphinx over here, the Necro Sphinx, is just getting destroyed. Whereas this Sphinx over here, the Sphinx of Usev, holding up a little better, but still not holding up ideally. It's definitely a rough situation. As well, these spears over here doing nothing. They really need to be pushing in. They'll bring down like Rail Guardian or two over here, but really not the most useful situation for him. And it's kind of just generated into blob fight. You can see the Necrotect here kind of grinding around. You can see Cetra up to 66 kills, 67, just slaughtering this infantry slowly but surely, but he really needs to be pushing through and getting into the main fight. And finally, the Sphinx actually does go down, so my opponent, for very little losses there, took down the Necro Sphinx. Definitely not what you expect as Tomb Kings from when fighting against Brettonia, but definitely coming down simply to my incredibly greedy, incredibly badly thought out play. Elsewhere, those knights just completely destroying me. You can see the balance of power decisively shifting out of my favor. It's basically all red in the middle, even a little red here under these swords, and definitely looking a little grim. So I pull the Sphinx away, looking to get a rear charge into the back of these foot squires, hitting it with a restore, trying to get HP back up. And it definitely restored very, very valuable. Restore has a lot of, can give you a lot of potential HP, and we do bump ourselves back up by about 1,500 over there. Elsewhere, though, you can see the Royal Pegasus Knights doing their very best. My opponent trying to goon out Cetra here, trying to put him down, but first Cetra has 100 HP, and he is really putting these Pegasus Knights down, and these Grand Lights and all those sorts of troops that we're kind of darting around, avoiding Lewin, avoiding the worst of these attacks, while doing a lot of work. And if we look elsewhere, you can see the Necrotect here raking the kills as well. Cetra able to do, he does have magic damage. He does have a respectable charge bonus, and if he can get connections on these knights, he's definitely going to be bringing them down. He's definitely going to do rather well. Another use of Incantation of Desiccation is going to go down, debuffing these troops once again, making them a lot weaker. And with the Sphinx of Usev in there, we're definitely going to be able to do lay a smackdown on these Royal Pegasus Knights, as well as these Rail Guardians before they flee. Now, unfortunately for my opponent, though, although this was beneficial for him, he does not have any healers. So all this damage he's taking is permanent. All this damage on these Royal Pegasus Knights, he's not going to be getting that HP back. Over here, Cetra just running amok, doing whatever the heck he pleases, just disrupting, destroying these troops, up to 133 kills after that explosion there. And he's just raking in the murder there. He's just nothing stopping him. The Necrotector over here does extricate himself, but he's going to be freed up for another charge into the flank of the Rail Guardians. Rail Guardians, of course, not an ideal unit. He actually does take one of them down there on the charge, I think. Not an ideal unit for taking on the Sphinx of Usev, but nonetheless, the balance of power is still rather slightly in my opponent's favor. It's definitely coming back, and we are going to get a summon of Arushapti here in the pits, who are immediately going to start helping. But nonetheless, things still not looking ideal. Louis, of course, still very healthy. There is still several Grand Lights around. Definitely were my opponent a little more on top of his cycle charging here. You could get a lot of value out of these guys. Tomb Guard essentially gone. This unit disintegrating. This unit very low. And despite our best efforts, the Sphinx of Usev definitely not trading ideally with King Louis. King Louis is just going to be able to escape here. He's going to dive into Cetra here, who's obviously not ideally suited to fighting big lords like this. And if we look here, you can see those Royal Pegasus Knights just diving in, trying to maul him, trying to maul the Chariot Lord to death, but he's having none of it. He's got a lot of mass, he's got a lot of mobility, and he's just going to be able to keep running away. You can see all these knights with their glowy lances just not able to do very much. We're going to dart around the Sphinx of Usev, dart around our infantry, and try to pull Cetra through to get on top of the enemy infantry, who are slowly but surely sort of getting dragged into the rock by this mob of high-end troops. Unfortunately, over here, the Sphinx of Usev is getting a little overextended. This is something you really want to avoid. You don't want to get surrounded ever with the Sphinxes like I did early on. That cost me immensely. But we are going to be able to get Louis here a little bit. And you can see the Sphinx of Usev here hit by a Jousting Incantation of Cursed Blades. King Louis dropping to 2,000 HP, dropping to 1,700. Cetra actually hitting him in the back with the Blessed Blade of Tra there, which is going to drop his stats if he can land a hit. And despite Stand Your Ground going down, Louis definitely not having the best time, but unfortunately, the Sphinx of Usev getting distracted by the Grand Lights. So, bit of a mistake. We are going to be able to cleave some of these guys down. We're going to be able to knock these Pegasus Knights down a peg. They're down to just their last legs. But nonetheless, the Sphinx definitely very low, down to 800 HP, and we are going to be forced to pull back and try to escape this fight. And Louis, though, just gunning for the Sphinx, getting that rear charge there, managing to make a connection, which is definitely some pretty brutal stuff. We're going to be able to pivot around though with the War Sphinx and land a direct hit on Louis, and this is actually going to be enough to force army losses onto the Brettonians. But at this point, with Cetra being so very healthy, obviously they don't have too many tools to deal with me otherwise. Cetra, even on a chariot, will be able to mow through cavalry, but nonetheless, a very brutal game. Where despite my worst play, probably, or some of my worst play in a long time, while trying to run a fairly competitive build, we still managed to pull things through. So you can see the Sphinx of Usev, or the Necro Sphinx, really not delivering, only 15 kills, basically just because of my own ineptitude. I sent it in way prematurely when I should have held it back until my infantry line clashed. Then we could have dove in, and we could have been countering the enemy cav and protecting Cetra much more effectively. Instead, it became a bit of a desperate last-ditch effort to keep our Sphinxes alive, and that was definitely a bit of a mistake. Necrotech and Cetra are doing a huge amount of work against that infantry. They're very valuable units for just doing that sort of mop-up duty. Very, very useful for that. Personally, I think in retrospect, I would have probably been better dumping the 2 Graveguard and the 2 Carrion and trying to replace them with probably 2 Graveguard with Halberds, or Tomb Guard with Halberds. Maybe it's not the ideal situation, but with Carrion costing 700 together, we could still have 500 gold left over for, say, another unit of Necron Warriors or something somewhere in there if we adjusted our points somehow, fiddled a little bit with that sort of stuff, and perhaps been in a better spot. As for my opponent's build, biggest flaw, no healer, which really bit him in the rear in the long term. Where I did at least have a Necrotect, and of course Cetra, he continuously heals my army with his spells. My opponent had absolutely nothing to heal his knights after they'd taken a lot of damage, so over time they sort of got torn down and definitely took a beating. It's one of those things you got to be wary of when you're playing as I think as Brettonia, you always want a caster. You can bring a caster pretty cheap. Like, I'm not entirely sure. We can hop over to customs here. And see, but if you go with a super cheap damsel, even if you want to go super cheap and you don't even want to invest in keeping her alive, heck, you don't even want to invest in Life Bloom. Even if all you do is just Earthblood, that's still valuable. You can get her for 300. Bring Regrowth and Life Bloom, which I think you should, on a horse. You've got, for 700, a little over 700, you've got a respectable caster who is going to be giving you lots of heals. And you know, that's 3 units of men-at-arms with spears or something. That's not the end of the world, and it will just give you so much more value out of your other units. Definitely, my opponent had so much infantry there, he could have easily sacrificed 2 or 3 units of them just to get a damsel. Like, even if you don't decide to go with Regrowth, for 500, that's 2 units of men-at-arms, essentially. You can easily make that work. But regardless, good game to my opponent. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share, and I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.